There's a path to mastery that starts with living from the heart. And I love when I am talking to guests who talk about life being simple, but not easy, and doing the work and tips on how to expect the best and get it. Welcome to the Karena, Virginia podcast. I am Karena, Virginia. This is where we expect the best and we get it. And I am so grateful to have my son, Christian, Virginia, here with me today. And we are going to be interviewing Joshua Medcalf for the second time. Actually, this will be our third podcast with him because our other one was a two-part podcast. Joshua is a leader. He's a best-selling author. He helps entrepreneurs. He talks about doing the work and how when we do the work and we align ourselves and use the gift of spirituality and living from the heart, the most incredible things happen. He also talks about how life is short. And if we don't do it now, we don't want to wait until the end of our lives to do it. So take a chance, take a leap of faith, and just do it. Thank you so much for being here. And I look so forward to sharing this conversation with you. I will be having my son, Christian, talking to Joshua as well. And I want Christian to ask him many questions because I think Joshua is an incredible mentor for teenagers, 20-something-year-olds, 30-something-year-olds, 40, 50, all of us, including kids. So I'm very grateful to have Joshua in my life and to have him also as a mentor to my son. I also want to mention that my son, Christian, was on the journey to becoming a lawyer. He's a senior in college, and he decided to tap into his heart, follow his dreams, and now he is going into the profession of kinesiology. And I'll talk a little bit more about that with Joshua. But I am a firm believer that we need to do what makes our heart sing professionally in our lives. We literally have like all of Joshua's books. And I noticed Christian not only reading them, but getting really absorbed in them. And I'm so grateful for you, Joshua, because I feel like you are a mentor. And I was saying this in the introduction, you are a mentor to so many people. And I'm observing how you are a mentor to my son. And I really believe in living from the heart. And Christian was going to go to law school. He's a senior in college, and he majored in pre-law and went to Portugal for a summer program, a law program over the summer. And when he came home, I could kind of tell that he loved being there, but he wasn't loving the program. And he had it in his head that, he had made that decision. And I really think that a lot of what Joshua talks about helped Christian to recognize that he needed to follow his heart. And now he is going to do some prerequisites, but he'll be going to get a master's degree in kinesiology. And I also think that we talked about this a little bit in another podcast. Christian had a severe back injury, and he was told that he could not lift weights anymore. He went to a number of different doctors, including some holistic doctors, and they all said the same thing. But what Christian did is he trained his mind to talk to his nervous system. And by talking to his nervous system, he completely healed his back. And I'm a firm believer that when we go through things in life and we go through the difficulty and we come out from the challenge, learning something new, we want to help others do that. And so this is Christian's passion and what he's planning on doing. And I'm so proud of him for many reasons, but one of them being that he's not doing what he is supposed to do. He's doing what his purpose is, what he needs to do. So
dials back to chapter 32 of Drop Would Carry Water, which I love that chapter, by the way. That was absolutely fantastic. And it really
Remind me what the chapter is.
It was the path. No, it was the map. When Akira was telling,
yeah, the map is not the territory. Yeah,
and exactly, and how you should not really focus on what people tell you to do, but actually follow what your heart tells you to do. And that has been my journey, kind of in an internal fashion for the past couple of months, because growing up, I was always told to go the organic route that society expects you to do, which is get education, get a job, build a family. You know what I mean? And never really just kind of like actually bother to veer off and go down the less traveled path. So I really do enjoy how you brought that up, because it really did just kind of like almost justify what I've already been thinking in my head for the past couple of months. You know what I mean? And it's definitely hard. It's hard. It's very challenging to kind of go off the comfortable, cushy path that's already been paved for you, and just kind of journey off into the unknown, and obviously this unknown being entrepreneurship. So I did love that chapter a lot, and it was good stuff, man. It was very, very good stuff. Yeah.
how did you do it, Joshua? How did you follow your heart and not do the traditional, or take the traditional path?
Well, I mean, the other thing I think is important from that chapter is that it's very important to find people that have actually explored the territory. And there's a lot of people that have read a lot of maps and teach from those maps, but that have never actually been to the places and never explored the territory. And it's a pretty common phenomenon today because of technology. So you have a lot of kids that feel like they know all these things, but they've never actually done them. They've just seen them, they've watched them. And it creates a very interesting human being when you've been exposed via a screen to a lot of things, but you don't actually have visceral experiences with those things and tangible experiences with those things. And so I just think that it's really important. And I was, every traditional teacher's worst nightmare, because I don't think there's a lot of teachers out there that dreamed of being a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that they fell into that. And I'm very grateful for a lot of them. And I think that they have a very vital role in society. But I just don't know a lot of people that when they're 6, 8, 10 years old are dreaming of being a high school teacher or a middle school teacher. And with the way my brain works, I recognized that very early. And I said, well, if you're not living your dreams, then why am I going to listen to you? And so the flip side of that, though, is that when I get around people that are living their dreams and that do operate and live in a way that I believe that they are expert journeymen in the territories, I do everything I can to sit at their feet and learn. Even so much as, it's funny you say that he had a very bad back injury, because I was just with Ben Askren on Monday and Tuesday, and Ben is a very famous, high-profile wrestler and MMA fighter who...
You're with Ben Askren? Are you serious?
Yeah. So I found out that I was his favorite author, and that Finish Empty was the first thing that he read when he woke up from a coma this summer.
Right.
And so the quick story was that he got pneumonia. He got a staph infection. The staph infection was eating his lungs. And so around May or June, he had to have a double lung replacement surgery. And so then when he came out of that about 3 months ago, he had started posting, maybe 4 months ago, these Mental Monday videos, and he talked about chop wood, carry water a lot in those. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I would just love to come and spend some time with you. And so we did that on Monday and Tuesday. I went and watched some of his kids train. And one of the kids that I watched wrestle had a broken back a year or two ago and was wrestling. And I watched him with my own eyes. I think he was a senior, but he could have been a junior in high school. So yeah. But those are the people that when I see somebody that is a actual expert in the territory, that I will go way out of my way to go and build a relationship with them, spend time with them, sit at their feet and learn. And so that's kind of the flip side that I don't think a lot of people focus on as much. I was very anti-traditional, but I was a sponge, and I was almost like a leech that would just attach to any time somebody came into my life that I could tell was great at something, and not just great at it, but that also had the personality and some of the other characteristics that I looked for. I would just try and latch on to them and sit at their feet. What can I do to get to be around you and learn from you? Because I believe you are a true expert in the territory. If you read Finish Empty, John from Iceland is in there. John from Iceland was staying with us a couple of weeks ago, and John from Iceland is not just a character that I made up. That's his real Instagram handle, and he is, as far as I know, the greatest explorer in Iceland. And I've been there with him and seen the places he's taken us. I've seen the stuff that he does, and so those are the people that I want to learn from, and that I've spent my life seeking out and trying to spend time with and learn from. But of course it's going to be hard. Of course it's going to be different, because anytime that you are forging your own path, or forging a path that maybe a few people have walked, but that has not been downtrodden and beaten down and paved by millions of people, it's going to be really challenging. But I don't know which book it's in, but one of the books, I put these 2 circles up, and in one circle I put 3 dots, and in the other circle I put like just as many dots as I can to fill the circle. And I talk about that one is self-directed learning and the other is rote learning. And if you just do rote learning, even if you get to you can be like, one of my best friends is a cardiothoracic anesthesiologist. That's like the top of the top of the top. Or you can be you can be the Ben Carson of neurosurgery. And it's great if you get all the way to the top. Number one, your competition is immense. But number two, there's always somebody that can replace you, because everybody else has the exact same formalized training that you do. And so it's really, really important, in my opinion, that we do these types of trainings and we do self-directed learning, to where, when I was on staff at UCLA, I always just chuckled, because it was like, who are you going to replace me with? Like, there's literally nobody in the world that you could replace me with that has my experiences, skill set. And, today, because of how I've transformed and pioneered sports psychology, there's probably some people that could be an adequate, person to kind of try and fill my shoes. But back then, there was no one. And there's people that could have filled specific parts of what I did, but in totality, it would have been impossible. And when you go down the self-directed journey and you forge that path, then even if you're the worst, so I always, in this circle, when there's only 3 people, I'm like, even the person down here that's like not that good, if there's only 3 of you, then you're still really highly irreplaceable. Whereas if you're over here and there's just everyone, you can be at the very, very top, but you're still incredibly replaceable because there's thousands of others that have done the exact same training that you've done. And again, that's useful for society to have replaceable, things and people, but then you're going to get treated more like a thing because it's, oh, well, let's just go to the next person. But if there's not another person that can do it, well, then you become very replaceable. But in that process, yes, it's going to be long. It's going to be hard. It's going to be arduous. And you're going to have a lot of people that are going to tell you that you're crazy. You're going to have a lot of people that tell you, why don't you just do A, B, or C? My sports psychologist from Duke met up with me in Los Angeles one time, and I was talking to him about trying to get speaking engagements and things like that. And he just said, Joshua, just go back and get your PhD in sports psychology. Just go to Tennessee and get your PhD like I did, Dr. Greg Dale. And I was like, no, I can't do that. but that's what they're going to want you to do. And he wasn't saying that out of malice or malintent at all. That's what he knew. And so of course he was going to say, this is what I think you should do because this is what I did. Yeah. So, but if you look at, I look to my left and I have tons of autobiographies beside me. And when you look at the people that you really respect and the people that you really admire and the way that they impacted and changed the world, most of them went down very non-traditional paths to get there. Doesn't mean it's for everyone, but I always felt like, we talked about this in the first podcast we did. My father grew up in a trailer park that he had to duct tape his trailer together and eventually became a very successful eye surgeon. If I had just gone to law school, I would have been a very good trial lawyer, very good convincing people of things. I would have been very good at trial law. But when I was about 30, recognized that if that's all I had done with my life, then I would not have been faithful with the opportunities that my father had given me. Mm-hmm. That sometimes in the first generation, you need to do something very safe and secure and law, medicine, finance, accounting. There's some very safe traditional paths. But for me, I had that built in. My dad was able to pay for me to go to Vanderbilt. It was a sacrifice, but they were able to pay because we had 2.1 scholarships for the whole program. And I had a 10% scholarship, which was a big scholarship, but nothing in terms of having to pay 90% out of pocket to go to school there. But he could do that because of the sacrifices that he made. But I just always felt like if I didn't go out and do something that I knew also that that's how I was wired and that's what I was built for, that would have been not being faithful. Or like, even if you look at the Bible, that would have kind of been like burying my talents and like, oh, but it's safe, or, oh, I put it in this safe little thing. No, like I was fortunate enough to have different opportunities and get exposure and access to certain relationships and wisdom and going to schools like Vanderbilt and Duke. And so for me, if I had just gone to law school, I would have felt like that was me not being faithful to the opportunity based off of the sacrifices that my father had made.
I love how you are reframing how so many look at it, right? Because I think for Christian, I don't want to speak for you, Christian, but it's an interesting way to look at it because you originally thought that Daddy was going to be disappointed if you didn't go to law school.
Yeah, I mean, that's very well put. And the reason I wanted to go to law school was not because I was interested in law at all. It was obviously because of this, right? Because of this. Not most people go to law school these days. And I also had a very narrow worldview, just a very narrow funnel of what I thought success looked like at the time. I thought that success was only indicated by dollar bills. And then I'm not sure when I had this kind of realization that I realized that success is not composed entirely of money. You look at all the renowned grifters in the world. The guy who sits in our Oval Office today, he was a very successful businessman. So sure, if you're only looking at the financial side and it's just this kind of black and white idea, then sure, yeah, he's successful. But there's a lot more components that go into success. There's a moral aspect to it. There's an ethical aspect. There's a passion aspect. Absolutely. And just to drift back to my main point, I had the same kind of idea of, well, my father, busted his ass, pardon my language, to provide for me and be able to pay for my college and my law school. So I feel like it's only right that I do the same thing and end up in this very high paying, line of work so I can do the same for my kids. Right. And I kind of thought I had the moral high ground by doing so. I'm like, listen, like the 40 years of me working, before I end up 65, semi-retired, just like my old man is currently, yeah, they're probably not going to be very enjoyable. I'm probably not going to really have a great time, but at least I'm going to be providing for my kids. So I thought for me, I was almost just kind of delegating 1/3 of my life to just entirely paying it forward, which in hindsight is a very
and the thing that you're assuming is that you're going to get to live that long.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a good point.
And I really enjoyed how that was your main premise in Finish Empty. Just the fact that, yeah, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed a week from now. So with the time that we do have, which is not even promised, you may as well do what you want to do. And, I thank God every day that I decided to actually just follow my passion and go down the route that is physical therapy.
And the weird thing is that for a long time that didn't used to have any end in sight that actually could have a lot of the trappings of typical success. But the crazy thing about the world that we live in today is that if you actually are relentless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire, then, and you need good strategies, you need good timing. There's lots of other like outside factors and things like that. But there actually are massive opportunities to do well financially today if you do that. And so to me, it's not just doing what you want to do, but it really is like you are the person that, like, I think on the back of Finish Empty, it says, that while life revolves around others, it's also a single player game and the controller's in your hand. And so we really need to be true to ourselves and understanding like what lights me up, what sets my soul on fire, what could I do, what would I want to do if I wouldn't get paid to do this, what would I still love to do, and if I do those things, like I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. that said, like a street sweeper that, does his job as if unto God, and that God could look down and go, wow, there lived the greatest street sweeper of all time. Really doing it in that way with excellence and pouring everything into it. Then it just over time, like, like a good quote for you to remember that, like I read this every day, I felt like, or every month as a kid, because it was in Proverbs, and my mom would have me read a chapter of Proverbs every day. But it was, do you see any truly competent workers? They will serve kings rather than mere men. And when you hear that as a young kid, you're like, competent? Like that seems like a really low bar. But, on Monday, I go to try and check in for a flight and get a boarding pass, and it's 28 minutes before my flight, and Evelyn and Chelsea are have zero competence and have terrible customer service. And like, you just see these things where you're like, oh, there's very few people that are actually truly competent. And it's a very rare characteristic and quality to find people that are truly competent. And so if you will just really, really focus on that and focus on, this is what sets my soul on fire, this is what I'm going to go pursue, I mean, there are people that are doing very, very well opening presents, that are, building Legos, like all these random things, but that's what they love. And all of a sudden, they've been able to build businesses around those things. And so that's the really like fascinating thing. I don't know how long that's going to last, but like we're living through this very unique period of time where you don't have to be just ostracized for that. You will probably be ostracized for it for a period of time, because if you're an adult that loves Legos, people are going to look at you very strange. But if you're really passionate and faithful, and again, have good strategies and see like, oh, how can I actually use this thing that I love and add value to the world? Well, then there's actually ways to be monetarily successful and do the thing that you love to do. So it's no longer an either or. There's actually opportunities out there for both and. And so that's what's really cool. And that's why I kind of yell about this stuff a lot, is that it's like for young people, I'm like, guys, you actually understand the tools and systems that exist today way better than the people that are teaching you. And so yes, there's wisdom and things that you need to learn from them, but like you actually understand how society is moving and culture is moving and how to use these tools. And if you would just shift your mindset from constant consumption to how can I create, not worrying about what brands can I get, but what can I actually build, there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's two completely different ways of looking at it. You're either going through the motions or you're waking up every day with just kind of like a fire in your belly to actually get to work on what you love. And I'm doing that right now, which is just funny you bring that up. I've actually created a business via Instagram to help people with their back pain through one-to-one coaching and selling programs. And that is the way of the future. Online coaching is a market that is growing exponentially right now. People are finding out ways to use AI to automate it and help scale their business through the use of artificial intelligence. And that is going to be the future going forward. Right now it's obviously just kind of in its baby steps, but we're going to be seeing this a lot more in the decades to come. So I figured I may as well give it a shot right now. And also just kind of channeling what I believe to be my life's purpose, my mission, what I was put on this earth to do, which is help people with their pain. The way that I found an outlet to already get a head start on it so quickly is really just a blessing. You know what I mean? And social media is very powerful. We're on here talking with you right now. Just the fact that you can reach anybody in the entire world, in contrast to reaching people within your local vicinity. If you live in this town or in this city, that is what you're limited to, the population right there. If you are on social media, the limit is pretty much everybody who has access to a phone or a laptop and who has an account and internet access. It is honest. It's pretty amazing, so I agree with you. I think that it's definitely the future, and it's going to be interesting how it grows and develops from here. But if you are not channeling this early on, I mean, it's not just fool's gold. There's absolutely going to be a growing market, and absolutely, you should be looking to create way more than you consume. The issue is the dopamine trap that is these little evil boxes that we carry in our pockets.
Well, we just have to use it rather than be used by it.
Exactly.
So there's immense power in them. They're very powerful. And it's just like with anything else, that if you focus on using it rather than being used by it, then it can be great. They're just tools. But if you're not careful, then they can be tools that are very destructive in your life.
Yeah. And I want to add to all of this something that I think the three of us have in common, which is that we're all rebels. And, I mean, in a lot of ways, Christian is my mini me, whereas Gabriella, my daughter, is a lot more like her father. And, in this conversation, I think it's important that we talk about how, getting even to this point, was not easy. It wasn't easy for me. It wasn't easy for you, Joshua, and it certainly wasn't easy for Christian. And, and when people listen to this, I don't want them to think, oh yeah, this kid, you know, because, and I don't, I want Christian to be able to say this, but I mean, he has got a mom right here who was so worried about him. I mean, I used to follow him and hide when he would go skateboarding with his friends. And I had moms from our town saying to me, your son's hanging out with the really bad kids and you better keep an eye on him, or don't even allow him to be with them. And so I would have conversations with Christian and I said, I'm going to trust you, but just remember you're guilty by association if anything goes on. The interesting thing is that one of these boys, Christian and this boy, went to skateboarding camp together, and I'm really soft. I mean, that's like to a fault. And so I'm like total enabler, and I've gotten better, but, I love kids so much. So this boy and Christian went to skateboarding camp and I drove them, and Christian's got his earphones on. He's playing video games in the back, and I'm listening to The Alchemist. The Alchemist, right? So I used to just listen to that over and over again. I mean, and remember I listened to that one CD, Christian, in the car, and you and Gabriella used to laugh so hard because it would come on all the time. What is grace? And do you remember that? And they'd go, what is grace? So I'm just laughing at that too. But anyway, so this boy is sitting in the back of the car, the boy that I'm not supposed to allow my son to be with because, we're better than, which really bothered me. I mean, I'm a first generation American. Both my parents are immigrants. My father worked so hard. He didn't even speak English when he came to this country. He spoke Italian and Spanish. Met my mom, who came from England, and my mom taught him how to speak English. He never went to college. He just worked and worked and worked. So anyway, this boy is in the back leaning forward. I look at him in the rearview mirror and I'm going, oh my gosh, he's listening to this. And so when we got to the camp, I said, I'm not going to say his name, but I said, did you like that, the story? And he goes, yeah, it was very, very interesting. And this boy went through some serious hardship.
I'm sure.
Serious hardship. But if you saw this kid right now, what I can say is I am so proud of this boy. And I am so proud of my son for befriending him. And, I was a very awkward kid, very awkward, and probably ADHD, even though I went to get a diagnosis and they said, no, it's more like you have anxiety disorder. I'm like, I think that's because I do yoga. Because I couldn't focus. My brother says that I would have been so drugged if it was this day and age because I couldn't sit still in school. But what I will say that, and Christian had some really hard times in school, and you can talk about it if you want, Christian, but I won't. But what I will say about the three of us, as well as being rebels, is I think we are three first of all, I think we're very spiritual and we believe in the higher power. I mean, I know you talk about Jesus in your book, Joshua, and even though Christian, was he used to read his books in church when he was younger. He would, he was in the choir and he would just stand there in the cherubs and everyone would sing and he would just stand there like this. And we would be like, oh gosh. And then in church, when you'd stand up to do the hymn, he would stand up with his like manga book, and I let him because I was like, you're in church. It's fine. Just whatever comes in. But anyway, we also, we're not like the typical kids. And this is what I want to say. I think the three of us are highly intuitive. And that intuition, when you tap it, and I think everybody has it, but some people kind of have had it their whole lives. It's hard to be so intuitive because you feel things. I mean, Christian and I we're at Trader Joe's the other day and I started to feel this really weird feeling. And he said, are you okay, Mom? And I made the wrong turn and I get a phone call. My mom's in the hospital. So, these things happen and they happen to Christian since he was a child. it's not easy because you're kind of a weirdo. You're living in this world where everyone's talking about such normal things, and you start talking and people are going, what is she talking about? My husband and I have this running joke where he kicks me under the table, like when we're out, because I just have no filter. And then I'll be like, why are you kicking me? And he's like, oh God, not again, But do you want to say anything to that, Christian?
I mean, yeah, I was definitely, I guess, a ruffian growing up for sure. Definitely could not put me in a box at all since I was a young child. Always just really, really enjoyed breaking the rules. I kind of still do here and there. I can't lie. But I definitely found my way, and I'm glad that I didn't really subject myself just kind of just listening to every single thing that the teachers told me to do or that other people told me to do, because you do kind of develop this sense of autonomy in a sense that kind of gives you your own self-direction on what you think is right. And eventually you grow older, you stop being so rebellious, and you kind of have your own internal filter of what is good and what is wrong, and just kind of your own moral compass. But I feel like it's better to develop that yourself through your own life experience than to look through the funnel of, oh, well, this is what my teachers say I should do. This is what my parents say I should do. I think that it's best to actually kind of experience things for yourself and go from there, and have that own personal sense of just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of wisdom. I think this is the difference. I don't know if we talked about this in the first podcast, but there's a big difference between wisdom and information. So I actually get asked a lot, like, what podcasts do you listen to? And I always say I don't listen to podcasts, because I think that podcasts are oftentimes full of information, and that, having published 12 books, I understand what you go through to write a book, and that, when you're writing a book, that you're thinking about it through the lens of, will this stand the test of time? And that the books have stood the test of time, almost more so than anything in life, for the last whatever, since the printing press came around. But even you look at the Egyptians and hieroglyphics. And so I think it's important to study wisdom. The issue is that, like with the kid that you were talking about that was in your car, I told the wrestlers this at Ben's Academy. I said, you don't hate to read. You've just been given really shitty things to read that aren't interesting. Mm-hmm. And if we would give kids things that are interesting, then it's actually not hard to get them to be very interested. Human beings are not wired to shut up, sit down, sit still, listen to a whole bunch of stuff that is not actually going to be practical and helpful for your life. The system is very much created to take artists and very energetic beings and turn them into controllable, somewhat robots that will fulfill roles that society wants them to fulfill. And so, but I do think it's important that there's, for thousands of years, there's plenty of wisdom that we can study that talks to us about morals and ethics and how to be an upstanding member of society. But yes, I also think it's important to figure out some of these things on your own. And, one of the things I told Ben that I thought was cool, that, having not grown up in a fighting sport with playing mainly basketball, soccer, but that in wrestling, there's immediate consequences. So like if one of his kids talks back to him or thinks that they're smarter than him, he can actually get on the mat with them and, kind of beat the shit out of them. So it's like, our world would be a lot better, in my opinion, if people had consequences for their actions. And, like with one of the Delta employees, she like got in my face, and I'm not going to say that I was great. I I was mad at myself because I knew that I could have shown up differently, but I'd gotten in at 9 p.m. the night before on a flight, and I needed to be at the airport at 5 a.m. for a flight the next morning. And I was tired, and I just wanted a boarding pass. There shouldn't have been any issues with it. But when I got her name, she like snapped. And I'm like, oh, you've never had consequences. I see how this is. You've never been punched in the face or slapped or done something, and then boom, like you get hit with real world consequences. And when you get hit with real world consequences, then you go, oh, either I don't mind that, or you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that again. And so we could use more of that in our world today, but that's kind of the beauty of fighting sports is that, you know, I was very impressed with his kids, but then when I thought about it, it's like, well, yeah, they're going to be that way, because if Ben Askren is your coach, you're probably you're not going to mess around a lot. When he tells you to do something, you're probably going to do it, because, you know, if there's a lot of basketball and football coaches that wish that they could put gloves on and teach consequences to their kids, but they can't do it. But no parent's going to say, oh, Ben, why did you get in the, you know, on the mat with the kids? No, like that's his job. So it was fascinating to see how kind of mature these kids were. But then when you think about it, it's like, well, they've got very real consequences. They work really, really hard, as everybody knows wrestlers do. And so they've got these two foundational characteristics that are built into their day-to-day environment that just lend itself to higher character in many different ways. And then you're also not afraid of a lot, because if you're used to getting punched in the face, if you're used to going to the mat, then what are you walking around afraid of in normal life? Because most people are scared to death of having to get on the ground and fight somebody or getting punched in the face. And the last thing that I would say on that point of the rebelliousness is that it's all a matter of perspective, because if you look at American Indians, which I have American Indian in me, and Comanche, so the kind of craziest of them, that what they would actually do for trying to find the next chiefs is they would find the young rebels, and those are the ones that they knew that they needed to train to be the chiefs. Because the truth is that the person that you want in leadership is not somebody that just goes along to get along. What you want in leadership is somebody that is willing to step outside of the traditional path and say, no. It doesn't matter that this is how things have been done. This is what we actually need to do, and is willing to have the hard conversations and do the hard things. I always used to tell people that, I'm like, oh, you think that I get paid the big bucks to be a powder puff cheerleader to people? I'm like, no, I get paid what I get paid because I'm the only person that's willing to tell very, very high profile, very, very successful people, I think you're wrong and you're doing this the wrong way. And that is very hard. That is something that very few people are wired to do. But that's what you need in a chief. That's what you need in a leader, is somebody that right or wrong does believe in what they believe in, and that can look at things objectively and say, you know what, I understand that this is what everybody is saying I should do, but I'm not just going to do that because of what they're saying. I have to run this through my filter. And I think it's very important to have wise counsel and you know, all of that. But then ultimately you need somebody that is willing to do what they believe is right, regardless of what the crowd says. And that's very rare.